Hi guys, Liam from Lanterna here with another IB geography video. This one is a continuation of the videos I've made on the global climate part of the syllabus. And this is the third one, and the first two, which if you haven't seen, I encourage you guys to check out. We're on first and foremost, what is global climate change and how does it work? What is the process by which the Earth is warming? And then the second video was looking at the environmental impacts of global climate change. This video I'm making now kind of colours in some of those blanks that we might have left in terms of that previous video, because we'll be kind of focusing fully on the human impacts or the impacts of global climate change on humans, people and places. Okay, and that'll be through three particular lenses. The first will be health, the second will be migration, and the final one will be ocean transport. Okay, and I'm sure you guys already have a pretty good grounding in some of these areas. Global climate change is something that we see in the news a lot. I'm sure you already have an idea about some arguments or consequences of that process. And today I'm just going to create this short video to make sure that you can consolidate some of those ideas and also maybe give you some statistics or something you haven't thought about yet that you can write about in your essays or in the shorter answer questions of paper 2. Cool, let's move on. Okay, so the first part, as I mentioned, we'll be looking at the impact of global climate change on health. And the first one is pretty obvious, the direct impacts. In that first video, in terms of the impacts that I made, we looked at the rise in more extreme weather events. So we looked at a rise in flooding, but we also looked at a rise in heat waves. And both of those, through injury or through accentuating existing medical conditions, particularly respiratory in terms of heat waves, has a direct impact on the health of people in the areas affected by global climate change. Okay, so the first kind of thing you need to remember is, the global climate has a big impact on health, and a change in the global climate will obviously accentuate some of the medical conditions that people are experiencing, and natural disasters, at least those indirectly or directly related to global climate, tend to have a really big impact on health in terms of physical injuries as well as deaths. The second one, or the second idea that you guys need to try and remember, are indirect impacts from changes in the biosphere. If you guys have forgotten what the biosphere is, click back on that last video I made, but it's just looking at life on Earth. So what are the indirect impacts to us as humans from change in the biosphere? And a really good example is a decrease in crop yields. Yields being how much we can get from a particular area. If we are unable to make enough crops, we might have an issue of distribution. People might not be able to get the food they need. That has many knock-on effects in terms of malnutrition, starvation, and more generally just a equitable distribution of resources. So not only does the global climate have an impact directly on humans, but because it affects crops, animals, plant life, that will definitely affect how our health sort of persists, because it is so dependent on the ability of the world and the living world, the biosphere, to provide resources for us. And finally, the indirect impacts from changes to resources. So we looked a little bit extensively at the idea of the water cycle and water supply. We know that the global climate and its change and the changes that are persisting within it, and global warming in particular, are leading to big changes in water supply. We know that, particularly if you guys have covered an earlier part of the paper 2, the core paper, you know that safe drinking water or access to water is one of the biggest indicators of success in a healthcare service within a particular area. So obviously, if global climate is affecting the water supply, that is going to have a massive impact on people's lives beyond health as well. Okay. Safe drinking water is one of the best indicators of development that we have at the moment. So you can remember that, and you can also link across these ideas. Remember that geography is such a wide and broad subject that actually to make links between particular topics and particular impacts is a really important and a top level skill that will get you, will win you favour with the examiner, and it also get you into those kind of higher bands when it comes to writing your essays or answering the longer answer questions. Cool, let's move on to the impact on migration. I've just cropped two particular quotes. The first is from John Kerry, who you might know is the ex-US Secretary of State. and he said that Europe must tackle climate change or face migration chaos. So that's a headline that I'm sure many of you guys have heard before, but he predicts that between 150 and 300 million people will be displaced by the middle of the century. Okay, and that's a large number of people, and indeed that's big enough to be the fourth largest country in the world, equivalent to the size of the United States. So that's a mass movement. We talk about mass movements when we looked at migration a couple of videos ago, but this would be one of the largest migrations in the history of the human race. So the impact of global climate change on migration is substantial, and it is a conversation that scientists are having in tandem with policymakers. We know that we can have the science, but unless we are enabling or enacting policy to mitigate the circumstances that they are predicting, we will have an event like this, and that will be to some extent absolute chaos. And I've seen predictions worse than this. I've seen 1 billion people will be directly impacted in terms of movement and moving home or migrating elsewhere by the end of this century. So the impact on migration is predicted to be massive, but it already has been massive. So I've got a little disaster-induced displacement map, an infographic, which you guys need to know about. It's become a new part of your course, so actually evaluating how the infographic communicates its ideas. We won't do that now, but this is just to indicate to you how many people were impacted by disaster-induced displacement. So movements away from home caused by a disaster that was intimately related to global climate change. You can see that massive statistic down the bottom here. That's almost 33 million people were displaced in 2012. That is a significant number of people, but still that's 10% of the predictions for the middle of the century. You can pause the video and check out some of the independent events that you might have read about in the news or seen online. China, particularly affected, but also India and the Philippines. They already have that monsoon season, right? And that exaggeration or the increase in the ferocity of global climate events or weather patterns means that these death tolls and these displacements are becoming larger and larger year on year. Maybe in 2022 we'll get a better indication of the size of disaster-induced displacement, but right now you can see that it's something that we are talking about, but not because it's going to happen, it is happening right now. Cool. Finally, I want to mention the impact of global climate change on ocean transport. So that's how things get around the world. You guys know that ocean transport is so important for trade and life generally. 80% of the volume of world trade is carried by the sea, and that means that international shipping and ports are kind of crucial linkages in the way the world is run. If we know that there's going to be more extreme weather events, actually transporting goods across the world may be disrupted, particular ports may become flooded. There's a number of circumstances that we don't know or we can't predict just yet, but it's likely that they will have a big impact on ocean transport. At the same time, as geographers, we need to know, we need to kind of look at both sides. We can't be one-dimensional in how we approach topics. Global climate change could have a positive impact on ocean transport. If I move my head out of the way, we'll be able to see the new shipping routes that are possibly going to come into place around the North Sea. So the traditional route to get goods to and from Rotterdam and Shanghai, two of the largest ports on planet Earth, would usually be down through the Suez Canal, heading through the Middle East, okay, via Egypt, and then around the Horn of Africa, beneath India, and kind of wiggling through, if that's a great word or an appropriate word, through Indonesia and up to Shanghai. Because of the melting ice and rising sea levels, it may now become possible for goods to be transported around the north of Russia and then around below Japan to Shanghai. And that would cut 2 weeks of journey time, which is a significant amount of time. It may mean that more perishable goods, so those goods that have some sort of time or date where they might expire or they may become worse in quality, will increase, might mean that two-way movement of goods, the nature of them changes. And there was a trial ship sent recently to look at that. And I think it was proven to be pretty successful. It's something that I know Russia and China are thinking about taking advantage of. And that's where this kind of geopolitics comes into it. Who wins, who loses, how will this northeastern kind of Arctic route affect how the world operates? Because we know trade is so important to politics. Actually examining this one particular route, you might be able to find some really interesting things in terms of how the world might be when ocean transport gets significantly disrupted in a positive or a negative way over the next few decades. But that's just a taster of this particular topic. As always, if you guys have any questions, please do just drop them in the comments below. I'm happy to answer them in a new video, or by all means request a video topic. And please do look at the previous videos that I've made. We've also got a rich repertoire of videos across your IB subjects, so your sciences, your maths. We've got your psychology stuff up there, economics as well. By all means, look at them. They're by these top tutors of Lanterna. And if you're looking for more extensive help, if there's a particular topic, idea, paper, essay that you're really struggling with, please do head to our website. That's www.lanternaeducation.com, and you can find out about the services we provide in terms of online tutoring, one-on-one tutoring. I'd love to be your tutor, but obviously we've got hundreds of people available to help you with whatever you need to. Cool, I'm going to leave it there, but look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.